give me a call.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's begin today's open discussion on various topics. Welcome, everyone. Let's open up today's session with reciting prayer for spiritual workers, and then we will move into our Q&A session and continue our discussion on life after death. Prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, would defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my karmic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, and even stronger in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right, welcome everyone to another open discussion and various topics. I believe this is class number 130 or 131. As per usual, feel free to post any questions or comments you have in the chat, and we will do our best to address those questions and answer them for you. We will also be continuing our discussion from last week, which we're briefly surveying the topic of life after death. Last week, we looked at the aura. We looked at positive and negative samskaras. We took a bit deeper investigation into the gunas, rajas, tamas, and sattvic, and as well as corresponded them to various actions, thoughts, words that leave impressions or samskaras or scars on the aura. And depending on which type of energy or guna you focus on to or you utilize in your daily life, it will leave the corresponding impression on the aura and have an effect both on the present life, the karma of the present life, the karma of future lives. We also looked at the types of karmas that affect us, the accumulated karma from past incarnations, the karma we're authoring in our present incarnation, and then the karma that is yet to be, dealt with or impacted us in future lives. Today, we will continue that discussion, but we'll also move specifically into the realms of existence, paying special attention to the etheric, astral, and physical realm. We'll look at the division of consciousness, or let's say the development stages through the states of consciousness, particularly looking at the realms of concentration, contemplation, meditation, samadhi, and cosmic consciousness. And then we'll take a survey of the path for life beyond death. Specifically, what happens to us upon the initiation of death, the division of the bodies. So in previous classes, we looked at the anatomy of the aura, from the aura being the vehicle for the soul, the different layers that compose the aura or the bodies that operate throughout the entire auric unit or make up the entire auric unit. Specifically, we're going to look at the etheric, astral, and physical bodies as we continue our survey. And hopefully we'll finish up this kind of overview of the path of life beyond death. We'll look at what happens as the consciousness transitions from the departure from the physical body, and how the consciousness is moved to the respective realm that it deserves to be on or to continue its experience cycle. And then at the end of its time period on the subtle realms, be it etheric or astral, the process of reincarnation or incarnation back into the gross physical realm, the mechanisms behind that. So before we start our discussion, do we have any questions or comments or follow-up from last time? Let me just check our email really quick. Okay. All right, so if we do not have any questions to start, I did mention last time that I was going to leave the diagram discussing the gross physical body to this time. And so we'll start our discussion here. And I want to talk about just briefly go over the gross physical body because it is the one that we're all most familiar with. And when we talk about life after death, and we talk about death, it starts with, I guess, the exiting of the gross physical body, and then the transitioning over into the subtle realms. It's not that we're not connected to the subtle realms. If you remember, in all of our teachings in the realms of the consciousness, and we look at the chakra system, let's go back up here, get to the realms. Okay, we are at all times connected to all the realms. But in the gross physical realm, we operate in the gross physical body, and in our limited state of conscious awareness, we are mostly aware of operate through the gross physical body. So we'll start our discussion there. The physical body, the discarding of the physical body. And move on to describing that initiation of death. So as it relates to the gross physical body aspect, the soul pulls on a portion of Shakti, then shapes and molds it into a field of conscious awareness and pushes the Shakti down the Brahmanadi, the sacral space of power. So it starts at the Sahasrara chakra, or the crown. The Shakti portion is pushed down the Brahmanadi, Shushumna, So let me go here. So this is what we're talking about. I had it here and I forgot where I put it. Here we go. Here is, and this let's assume the Nadic flow. The Shakti is pushed down the Brahma Nadi, that thin channel in the middle. Let me zoom in a bit. Until it reaches an equilibrium point at the Muladhara, or the base of the spine. As it fits here. At that point, it goes into a dormant state. And in that dormant state, it enters a 3.5 knot configuration where the Shiva is revealed. And it is at that point the Shakti energy takes on the Kundalini aspect. Right, as you can see here, the celestial sounds of Kundalini, once again, the Shakti reaches the Muladhara chakra, it releases the celestial sound of Kundalini and the 4 states of sound. Remember, we looked at that before. The 4 states of sound: Para sound, unmanifested motionless sound; Pasyanti sound, sound of first movement; Madhyama sound, the sound subtle aspect, formation of subtle bodies; and Vikari sound, the sound gross aspect through sound and subtle bodies encased by gross manifestation. So I'm going over this part rather quickly because we already reviewed this in previous open discussions, and these notes are available in these shared drive folders. So you are more than welcome to click the link in the description and download these notes and go over them. This gross physical body, though, node or diagram is not yet in the shared folder because we're still working through it. This is a working process. And once it's complete, I'll upload it to the shared folder and announce it to everyone so you'll know that it is there. But here again, the 4 states of sound. The Para sound, comprised in Muladhara, Svadhisthana, and the Manipura chakra. Pasyanti sound, Manipura Anahata. Madhyama sound, Anahata Vishuddhara, and Vikari sound at the Vishuddhara, Ajna chakras. Man's consciousness on the physical and subtle planes of existence requires a manifestation of 4 distinct states of sound from the soul's vehicle of consciousness known as Kundalini. The soul of man, at the express will of the spirit, pushes the Shakti power, now Sushumna, into a 3.5 knot called Kundalini, which reveals its essence, Shiva, by moving into a dormant state and releasing a creative holy sound that manifests itself within 4 distinct sounds. Now, these 4 distinct sounds produce 1, various states of consciousness; 2, pranic motions; and 3, levels of operations. Pranic positions, yeah, and 3 levels of operations. The 4 states of sound are known as Para sound, and here illustrated at the Muladhara, the base. This is the supreme sound as pure potentiality in the divine will of the Absolute, arising from the union of Shiva and Shakti. Then we have Pasyanti sound. This is visible sound of the mental images prior to thought. This is the sound that arises from the subtle level of sound. It graduates from the first state of sound into the power of consciousness that forms the mental images prior to thought. Now, notice here, Nehemiah uses the term mental images prior to thought. In a previous class, Nehemiah described the process of thought and how those mental images first appear in the aura, projected through a psychic center, and then through the transceiving set, as Dr. George King refers to the brain, or transmission set, and we receive those mental images into the brain. They're processed into thought. They do the double relay up the spinal column, and then we're able to express that thought on the gross physical realm, either as physical thought, speech, and action. Depending on the level of consciousness the individual or we're acting upon or working upon, it will be that particular psychic center where that mental image will propagate from. So the higher the level or types or pure the types of thoughts we have, we will pull those images and that stream of consciousness from the higher centers. The lower our level of energy or impressions that we're operating upon, the lower we'll pull a stream of consciousness from the lower levels of lower realms or the lower psychic centers. So you can see how when we're looking at previously, when we're talking about the gunas, the sattvic, the rajas, and the tamastic types of energies and the types of impacts, some samskaras they have on the aura, you can see how it's all beginning to tie together. If we keep ourselves in a sattvic state of mind, in a spiritual state of mind, like in the first 4 limbs of Raja Yoga, we will constantly pull on this higher level of consciousness, and that's those energies that we're constantly feeding our aura with will permeate throughout the aura, generating more and more positive samskaras and allowing us to operate on higher and higher levels of mind. As Dr. George King said, we're constantly moving through a sea of mind. And what allows us to tap into the higher levels of mind is a level of consciousness that we feed and constantly enforce in our daily thoughts, words, and actions. Is that right, Nehemiah? That's simple.
Yes, it's like you can imagine. We live in a sea on the atmosphere of this earth. We live in a sea of oxygen and nitrogen, in a sense. And the only way we hold consciousness is by breathing in and out 621,000 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that oxygen and nitrogen is a product of mind, of universal mind energy, helping to hold consciousness on the physical plane. The same thing is the water. That's why the mystics, we have to drink so much water a day. That's why the mystics tell us that the water, the 70-some% water on earth is a psychic energy. And it helps to sustain consciousness. If someone get dehydrated, they begin to what? They begin to lose consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
They can't process thought. They can't stay on the physical plane. They have to be released to one of the subtle or astral planes. such as the power of the universal mind.
Right, thank you. Let's next move to Madhyama sound. This is the intermediate level of sound as manifested thought. Keep that in mind. The intermediate level of sound as manifested thought. It is the level where the visible sound, pasyanti, graduates to manifested thought forms with continuous motion. It is here where this level of sound builds motion before it solidifies into gross audible sound. This is one of the keys behind the prayer technique taught to us and given to us by Dr. George King. When we adopt the prayer mudra and raise our hands, right, to the heart level and above, and we, what's the word I'm looking for? When we activate and utilize the heart center in the projection of energy in our prayer, this is one of the keys behind that, behind the genius of that prayer technique. We're visualizing the white light coming down. We're pulling upon a higher source and then pushing it into the heart center and through the heart center as manifested thought, to manifest it onto one, the planes or plane or planes we're operating upon, and two, to the projected target in which the prayer or healing energy is being sent to. Again, it says here, it is this level where the visible sound graduates to manifested thought forms with continuous motion. What keeps that motion continuous? Preservation. And what is the power of preservation? Love. So when we invoke this energy, impinge our intention upon it to send it out or to manifest it out in healing and upliftment, what keeps that thought form manifested with continuous motion is the love that we pour into that prayer or into that radiation. And it preserves that power as it continues to go out into the world for healing, for upliftment, for spiritual enlightenment, so on and so on and so forth. Again, it is here where this level of sound builds motion before it solidifies into gross audible sound. When we're studying these teachings, it isn't just for a theoretical exercise or for some academic inquiry. It is so that we can dig into the nuts and bolts of the practices that are given to us, so that when we lift our hands in prayer, we're doing it in full faith, in full confidence, and in full belief that both my understanding and my faith are working together to empower my actions and this prayer. I'm not hoping it works. I'm not leaving it at somebody else's word. I have experience, I have knowledge and experience which strengthens me, which strengthens my faith, and lets me know that this shall come to pass. This prayer will work. This energy will go to its target, and it will have its intended effect. Because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it will do so. So don't just look at these teachings, these notes, these diagrams as some nice to knows. It is a science, a spiritual science, the science of yoga that allows us to manifest our highest self, our highest potential in our daily lives. So that when we sit down to chant a mantra, when we raise our hands in prayer, or even when we volunteer at a soup kitchen, it is all done to the highest and best that we possibly can, and all of it leads towards union with God. Vicari sound. This is manifested sound, a gross, coarse, audible sound. All right, so now we're looking at the throat center. This is the final step in the 4 levels of graduated sound. It is the solidification of sound in gross, intelligent form. At this level, consciousness exists on several realms of existence. The casual or superconscious realm, the etheric realms, the mental realms, the astral realms, and physical realm. And then here we have lines and arrows moving about from the bone system, the skeletal system, and from the bone system comes skeletal and bone marrow. From bone marrow, that's where the blood cells are produced. And then from the blood cells, various human tissues are produced. And from the human tissues, we get human organs and the organal glands and the human systems. You can also do a study in Ayurveda for much more detail about the human systems. Now, although this is talking about, or in this particular diagram, we're specifically looking at the gross physical body, the astral body as well has its tissue, its organs, and so on and so forth. And I believe the etheric body as well, right, has its organs, tissues, and cells, right, Nehemiah? I think.
Yes.
Yes.
The only difference is that the the tissue is closer, the matter is closer together, is denser, believe it or not. It's denser. Now, in etheric forms, there are several forms of etheric body. The etheric body can, although it has the human features, it can also have other features as well, based on the need of where it needs to be and how it needs to operate.
Right. So when you, to society members, when you listen to transmissions of the actions of the adepts taking, they're working upon higher realms, or when you go and read Visit to the Logos of Earth, when they talk about when the master in a projected body went to visit the Logos of Earth, why it was necessary, even in a higher body, like an etheric body, why it was necessary for him to wear a protective suit when standing before such a highly evolved and great, majestic being as the Logos of a planet, the Logos of the Mother Earth. even though the etheric body is a very sturdy body, especially when compared to the gross physical body, it still has its skeletal system, tissue system, and bones that can be broken, bodies that can be injured and damaged. And especially when you go back and listen to the actions of the adepts on the various realms and how they sustained injury in those bodies. These bodies are not indestructible. They're very sturdy, far more so than the gross physical body, but they can still sustain injury and damage. And you can die on an astral realm, on the physical, on the etheric realm, just as you could die or go through initiation of death here on the gross physical realm. So keep that in mind as we next move into the other parts of our discussion today. Before I do that, do we have any questions or comments or anything you want to add anymore?
No. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Unless someone else has questions.
Is this? Okay, so now let's look at, briefly, we looked at this diagram before. From the top down, we have the higher etheric realms, generally from the heart center upwards. And in the higher etheric realms, we have mostly in operation the supra and super conscious minds. The basic realms, or the astral realms, having from the Muladhara, the base of the spine, up to the solar plexus. And in majority operation there is the subconscious and conscious minds. Now, the super and superconscious mind is present, but they're more of a background in these lower realms, and the conscious and subconscious minds are more dominant in the lower realms. I'm sorry, in the basic realms and astral realms. And then in the Muladhara downwards, the chakras in the legs, you have the 7 lower astral realms, and the astral realms are composed altogether, referred to as the hells of the lower. I've gone over this one before. Let's take a look. Okay. Now for the path for life beyond death. Let's first look at the chakras. At the base of the spine and the sex chakra, we have the Rudra Mahabindu, sun rays that are absorbed by the earth and are used to build the physical and subtle realms. See that here at the base and the sex center. From the solar plexus and the heart center, and the Vishnu Mahabindu sun rays that directly hit the earth. I'm sorry, I skipped some parts. At the base of the spine, you have 56 tattvic rays. At the Bhuh Loka and the terrestrial world, it's at the base. At the sex center, you have 62 tattvic rays. The Bhuvar Loka, and this is the astral world. And then at the solar plexus, 52 tattvic rays, the Swah Loka, or the astral subtle world. See here. For the heart chakra, 54 tattvic rays, the Mahar Loka, and the etheric realms of adepts and masters. You can see here at the heart center, the higher etheric realms begin. At the throat and Christ center, you have the Brahma Mahabindu, sun rays reflected from the moon and builds the mental realms. At the throat center, we have 72 tattvic rays. That's the Nana Loka, again, etheric and realms of the adepts and masters. And at the Christ chakra, 64 tattvic rays, the Tapo Loka, and also the etheric realms of adepts and masters. Each chakra represents a doorway into the physical, mental, and subtle mental and psychomental realms of existence. These realms are built from the subtle solar logos material, i.e. solidified sunlight, Zakajush King, because everything is made of solidified sunlight. The tattvic rays represents a string of subtle, vital, and intelligent energy formations that can build worlds of existence. The column gives the Sanskrit names for the major realms of the earth, which coincide with the chakras along the spine. The 3 layer chakras are the astral realms, and the 4 upper chakras are the mental etheric realms, or the more higher realms. Reincarnation from gross mental physical life experience cycles to subtle psycho mental physical life experience cycles and repeated continually. So that's these 2 circle arrow cycles representing physical experience and physical mental experience cycles, or the cycles of reincarnation or samsara. Okay. Let me close this so I can see this better. Okay, so now we'll go into the path for life beyond death. First, we have the base of the spine chakra, and let me know if this is difficult to see, and I'll zoom in. The base of the spine chakra, Muladhara chakra, the basic mental and physical realm of existence for human progress. Base of the spine, that is referred to as level 1. Okay, so we also have here the centers in the chakras, the lower centers in the legs, those pertaining to the animal kingdom, and we'll look at that later when we get to the bottom half of this chart. Number 2, the sex chakra, the Svadhisthana chakra, the home of most souls' mental and physical states. At one point of time, the sex center, the seat of our consciousness, or the bulk of our consciousness for us at our current level of evolution, is housed, for most of us here on the physical plane. 3, the solar plexus chakra, Manipura chakra. This is the highest of the basic subtle mental realms. There's a mixture of souls here. So basically, if you were to look out psychically across the realms, it is in these 3 lower realms where you would see the bulk of the human population on Terra, on Earth. The vast majority of us are housed here. As you go higher and higher up into the realms, it is more and more sparsely populated. Now, as far as I know, that is, well, in this solar system, that is the case on our planet, on Earth. Majority of our population is in the lower realms. On the other planets, the vast majority of the population have abandoned the basic gross physical realms and have moved on to the higher etheric realms. For at the heart chakra, Anahata chakra, the fourth highest seat of the subtle realms. It gives meaning to all the realms below. This is for level 4. And you'll notice that this description of the heart chakra also corresponds with the state of sound that is located there as well, right? That being the Madhyama sound. All right, let's continue. Oh, I just lost my place. Number 5, the throat chakra, Vishuddha chakra. The third highest set of subtle realms, the mental planes of the masters, and is referred to as level 5. Number 6, the Christ chakra, Ajna chakra, the second highest set of subtle realms, the mental planes of the masters, level 6. And the crown chakra, Sahasrara chakra, the highest subtle realm of existence, level 7. The chakras are the doorways to all the realms. Each chakra is a vortex center of mental and subtle cosmic energies that possesses a doorway to the mental, psychic, and spiritual realms of Earth. This is evident in an introduction to the physical world through our mother's womb. The sex chakra and the rise of Kundalini through pregnancy builds a vortex center of gross mental and gross physical energetic matter that allows us to enter this physical realm of existence. Nimai, did you want to go into that a little bit more?
No, just go ahead and continue.
Okay. All right, so now let's look at the 7 lower chakra realms, and then we'll move into this diagram here, this flow chart here, describing the initiation of death. The 7 lower chakras and realms. We'll first look at the Atala chakra, and that is at the hip region. Here it is a state of fear and lust. Number 2, the Vitala chakra at the thigh regions is a state of raging anger, like uncontrolled anger. Stula chakra, number 3, at the knees is like a retaliatory or a state of jealousy. Talatala chakra, the calves, prolonged mental confusion. Number 5, at the ankles, Rasatala chakra. Yeah, those are the states or energies of selfishness. The Mahathala chakra, number 6. Mahathala chakra, number 6. At the feet is the absence of consciousness, or self-awareness. And then at the Patala chakra, number 7, located at the soles of the feet, it is there where energies like murder and deep malice located or originate from. So remember when we said that the mental images which become thought are projected through the realm of consciousness or chakra that one is operating from, then are met by the antenna set, the transceiver set to the brain, and to thereby be acted upon or indulged in on the gross physical realm. You can, if the centers from the below the base belong to the animal kingdom and human kingdom of expression begins at the base upward, when we give in to fear, lust, anger, jealousy, selfishness, malice, we're not even operating on a human level of operation. Spiritually speaking, we're involving ourselves into an animalistic type states. Which has a negative effect on the aura, produces negative samskaras, and authors for ourselves a karma which we have to work through in present and future lives. Now, after a lifetime of indulging in either lower or upper thoughts and actions, we come to the initiation of death. Now you'll see on this table, on this chart here, there are two paths the individual can take upon the initiation of death. There are those who have a knowledge of life after death. In other words, be it a religious type knowledge of believing in a heaven or in hell, or a more metaphysically grounded knowledge in knowing, as we're talking about the realms, the chakras, even more so if you have some experience with the other realms, either through astral or etheric projection. Upon the discarding of the physical body, those with a knowledge of life after death, they, number one, quickly become aware of the death state. When the physical body is discarded, there is an immediate state of shock that happens to the consciousness. Actually, if you ever spent time in a hospital or in a hospice setting, you see individuals who are going through the process of death, who are dying. What you'll kind of feel or notice is like a dissipation or a shrinking of the aura as the consciousness begins to move away from that physical body. And once the aura is completely removed from that physical body, that physical body goes through what we call death. There is no longer a consciousness animating and working through that body, and therefore it is discarded. Now, once that consciousness exits the body, if they have a knowledge of life after death, they realize what has happened to them. Okay, I'm no longer inhabiting this body. I've passed on, and they quickly move into that awareness of their death state. For those with no knowledge of life after death, when death takes place, for the average person who has no idea what life after death is, they enter a prolonged state of confusion from the shock of unexpected death, which is called the waiting realm. And you'll see this if you have a bit of a psychic development, spiritual development, and you come into contact with those who are, if you're in like have relatives or so forth, who are going through in a hospital or in hospice, and they're going through the dying process. For example, you'll see them after the shock of that death, or in like catastrophes, or in accidents where they're suddenly pushed into the initiation of death. There's a time of confusion where you'll see the astral body kind of lingering around, wandering around, just in a state of shock and unable to make that transition over. Or there is some lingering attachment that person was not able to alleviate before their passing, and that attachment keeps them here, grounded onto the physical realm, not allowing them to move forward. That leads to other things like hauntings and so on and so forth, but I'll try to avoid that type of stuff here in this discussion. In that waiting realm, for those souls who pass without the knowledge of death, the soul, or the highest part of themselves, has received counseling. It gives counseling individual that passed receives counseling, treatment for the mental shock, and in some cases receive healing before moving forward. And there are groups or entities that specialize in this type of healing. They'll either go and approach those who are lost in this state of confusion or shock, and will try and help them to realize the state that they're in, that they're no longer living in the gross physical realm, but have passed on, and to help them heal from that shock so they can continue on their journey, their evolutionary journey, and re-enter back into the incarnatory cycle. We can also help with that by when a loved one has passed on, or someone has passed on, we can send healing energy to them, either even while they're going the transition of death, to ease the transition for them, and even after they've gone through the transition, after they've passed away, we can continue sending healing and uplifting energy to them to help them work through that shock state. Remember, that shock state hits either knowledge of life or death or no knowledge of life or death, but is at how quickly they move through that state and become aware of the death state is one of the major factors here that determines how fast they move, how fast they move onwards into the soul slumber state, which is coming up next. Now, for someone with knowledge of life or death, they quickly become aware, as I mentioned before, of the death state, and they discard, because they're aware that they've moved into the death state, they discard the astral body instead of inhabiting the astral body and continuing to wander around in this shock type of aloof state. That this astral body is discarded, and they quickly move into the soul slumber or realm of existence. Now, it is in this soul slumber state where the soul begins to review its most recent life and all its lives that are impacting that present karmic moment. So it goes through that reel of it examines the life that just completed and also the other lives previously. And with that information, or with that reviewing to determine the impact of that particular cosmic moment, it is then guided into the hall of self-judgment. Now, notice that it is called the hall of self-judgment. We look at all of our past. The soul looks at all of its past thoughts and actions, and takes that into the hall of self-judgment, where it judges itself. And to determine the next life that the soul will have once it again incarnates into the physical realm. Mentioned here in this cloud, let me zoom in because I don't know if you guys can see that. The soul is guided into the hall of self-judgment by cosmic beings, where the soul judges itself with the wisdom of the I am, the spirit. Now, we're taught that this hall of self-judgment is on Saturn, and the Saturnians, these highly advanced cosmic beings, guide and assist us in this process of self-judgment. And move on to step 4. The soul is given karmic limitation by spirit through the hall of self-judgment. Karmic limitations imposed on the soul by the spirit are the experience cycles needed as lessons for the soul to grow in higher consciousness. So whatever karmic limitations that we are experiencing right now in our lives are the result of our most recent life, most previous life, and all of its lives prior. All of that is, all those thoughts, those words, those actions, that energy is taken into consideration. And then we determine, based off of the objective that we're trying to achieve, returning back as conscious gods, in order to help us accomplish that end objective, what type of limitations or lessons will the soul, have to give itself its next incarnation in order to help it to move along and accomplish its evolutionary purpose? So all the limitations we have upon us right now are limitations that we gave ourselves, the highest aspect gave to ourselves. We mold and shape our existence, life after life after life, year after year, week after week, day after day, second after second. We mold and shape our existence. The experience cycles that we go through are no one else's fault than our own. That's not, and if you really think about that, it's not anything to be afraid of. It's actually a type of grace, a type of mercy, if you really think about it. It's really a kind of a blessing when you think about it, because you can really begin to sit down and employ enlightenment. And what does Nehemiah refer to? Enlightenment is predetermining all of our actions. You can say, okay, if these are the laws given to us in various different ways through all of the ancient teachings, through all the masters that have come to this world to teach us the law, not only to teach us the law, but how to use that law to accomplish the goal of yoga, union with God. If these are the parameters that I must operate within in order to accomplish the objective of whatever I want to do, but what to say for spiritual advancement, then I can begin predetermining those actions and then employing those actions to get the guaranteed result I want. So if I want in a future life, say in this life, just a rough example, let's say mathematics is very difficult for me. I'm very hard to understand mathematics, for example. Let's say, well, if I want to become better and better at mathematics, I can spend a few hours every day to get better and better, or even less, a few minutes every day, practicing, getting better and better and better and better at it. And it may even seem very difficult. It take me a very long time to just master a simple concept. It's been a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, just getting better and better and working and pushing through, building my understanding of mathematics. Upon the discarding of the physical body, all of that work and study and discipline does not vanish with the physical body, does not go off into oblivion. When we come back in the next life, that samskara will be there and prominent within the aura, because we carry the aura with us life after life after life after life. That samskara will be there and prominent. So my next incarnation or subsequent incarnations, it'll be easier and easier and easier for me to pick up any type of mathematical study. It'll be familiar to me in a future life. If I continue on, it'll be even more familiar and more familiar to becomes easy and second nature. The same thing with anything. If I know I want to accomplish yoga, it may take a 10,000 lives, may take 100,000 lives, but each step we make towards union with God, it builds a momentum and that carries forward life after life after life after life, growing and growing and growing until eventually there's the breakthrough and we move on towards ascension. So when we're taught in Raja Yoga to yama and niyama, to abstain from certain thoughts and actions, it is all towards this purpose, so that we don't take in these or indulge in these energies in lower chakras and realms, thereby negatively affecting our aura and then having to work through that and exercise that out in future lives. But instead, we're feeding the aura with sattvic, more and more sattvic type gunic energy, and thereby allowing us in future incarnations to take upon less and less limitation and move closer and closer to freedom, true spiritual freedom as laid out in the 9 freedoms. Does anyone want to add or correct Nehemiah before I move on?
Lisa had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the chat?
Yeah, it's in the chat. She said, would spirit guides help with the transition? Sometimes, yes. There's always, in most cases, not always, in most cases, your loved ones that went ahead before you are aware of your transition. And if they can get to you, they will try to get to you. And then also, if you have a spirit guide or teacher that's been close to you for many lifetimes, they would either go there themselves or they will send someone there for you in most cases. So that's a yes, but not always.
I apologize, guys. My chat wasn't updating. And I'm having trouble reconnecting to the stream. I'll wait for that to load. I will tell you one story from my experience. I had a few years back. I think I was up in Virginia or Washington, D.C. to attend my grandmother's funeral. And after the service, we went back to the home for the repast, as you know, typically done in Caribbean culture. And while everyone was there at the home celebrating the life of our grandmother just passed away, I felt pulled to the room where my grandmother, when she was living at home, she had passed away at home. I felt to the room where her bedroom was, and I sat down in the room by myself, and I felt her presence come into the room. And so I sat there for a while and spoke with her and let her know what had happened, give her an idea of what she was going through, told her not to worry. All of her daughters, my mother and my aunts, her children, they'll be okay. We'll all be okay. You don't have to continue around watching over us, looking over us. You can continue, I can pass over and move along. I think I sat there for about an hour or two, just conversing through thought, not really talking, just conversing through thought. I mean, I'm talking to. And then eventually I felt her leave the home, leave the room. And, I got up and went back to join the rest of the festivities. My grandmother, she grew up was a devout Christian and did have some knowledge of life after death, but even then, it is still quite a shock. Because when I was communicating with her, she was wondering why nobody was answering her. She was talking to people, trying to reach out to people, and nobody was answering her. Nobody was looking at her. Nobody was paying her any mind. So I kind of explained what was going on and helped her to come into the realization that she was no longer in the physical body. She had passed on, and that we were all here. She was wondering why we were all in her house dressed in black. I was like, well, that's why, Grandma. And so this is one experience I had. And as you'll develop a bit more, you'll have similar experiences, or even far more significant ones in that. So as I'm waiting for the chat to reload, here we go. Now it's telling me I'm not broadcasting at all.
Broadcasting on YouTube or on Zoom?
On YouTube, yeah. I don't know if I am or not. Sorry. Back here. 1 second, please, guys. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay. Okay. Thanks, you are. I can hear you. All right, thanks, guys. I can see the chat now. Where was I? Karmic limitations imposed on the soul by the spirit. The experience cycles needed as lessons for the soul to grow in higher consciousness. The soul is given karmic limitations by spirit through the hall of self-judgment. And then next, number 5, the soul enters the realm that it deserves based on the karmic limitation placed on it. Upon leaving the hall of self-judgment, the soul takes on the body dictated by karmic limitations to live on the subtle realms for a time specified by karma. All right, so the physical body, discarded. Astral body, discarded. And the etheric body and the other bodies, pranic bodies and so forth, mental bodies, and the auric unit persist. Then ushered into or guided into the hall of self-judgment. And in that hall of self-judgment, it is determined, 1, which subtle realm you will be incarnated to with your respective karmic limitations. Then you remained on that subtle realm for a specified time, and that time is again dictated by karma. And then after that time is complete, you then move from the subtle realm into the gross physical realm to take on gross physical existence. Now, the process mentioned earlier, and this text back here, talk about being birthed through the womb of your mother. That only happens when we are reintroduced onto the gross physical realm. When you take up your habitation on the subtle realms, you do so in your, most times in an adult etheric body or so forth. Right. So that's the process if there is a knowledge of life after death. On the other end, with no knowledge of life after death, again, we mentioned number 1, the person enters a state of confusion from the shock of the unexpected death, which is called the waiting realm. Again, you'll see this a lot in accidents, fatal accidents. where the person suddenly dies. And sometimes you can even see it on video or pictures where you'll, like a car crash, for example, the person dies in a car crash, and then you can actually see their astral body wandering around the car, the vehicle, looking at themselves in the car. You know, it's in a state of shock. They can't believe what happened. And to the soul, I'm going to come down here so you can see this. Two, the soul has to be counseled and treated for mental shock, and in some cases receive healing before moving forward. As number three, after the appropriate therapy and treatment, the soul is guided into soul slumber, realm of existence, where it reviews its past life. So here, there is a huge response crew of subtle intelligence who have made it their duty to help those who find themselves in the realms of waiting in a state of confusion. Normally, they are formal medical people or public servants who have passed on. It's like doctors, nurses, social workers, and so on, people who worked in public service or in health field. Normally, after they pass on and have, depending on their knowledge of life or death or none, they go through this process. Once they go through the soul slumber and take up their respective subtle realm, they can then continue on the subtle realm in service to those who are in this type of waiting realm in a state of shock, and then go and help them, give them healing, give them therapy, and then bring them over to it looks like a huge clinic or facility where those individuals are given healing, rehabilitation, and brought into, they work through the shock and the trauma, and then they're brought into awareness that, okay, now I'm on this phase of life, and as I await my evil time to re-enter the cycle of reincarnation. A good movie that kind of describes this process, it's a Brazilian movie. And the English title is Astral City. I can't remember the Brazilian name. If I think about it, if it comes to my mind, I'll bring it back up. Number four, the soul is guided and ushered into the hall of self-judgment. So the hall of self-judgment is, everyone has to go through that. And then again, like number five, the soul is given karmic limitation by the spirit through the hall of self-judgment. The soul enters the realm that it deserves. Number six, the soul enters the realm that it deserves based on the karmic limitation placed on it. And then step 7 here, but step 6 here. There's less steps in those with knowledge, life, to death, because they don't have to spend as much time, if any, on the waiting realm. Step 7, the soul lives on the subtle realm for a specified karmic time for a set of experience cycles. At the end of that subtle realm time period, they've done, the subtle realm is over, the soul once again enters the hall of self-judgment to prepare for physical birth again. Now, many things can happen to the soul once it transitions at the initiation of death, and then prepares for one, its time on the subtle realm, and then 2, to be reintroduced into the gross physical realm through physical birth. Let's say it's an individual, a fair level of advancement, aware of knowledge, life, the death. And this is something Nehemiah has told us, that they are actively working towards a particular goal or a spiritual purpose, like say they are a member of an organization or an entity that's doing a lot of good for the world and for humanity as a whole, their time period on the other realms upon death could be shortened so that they can quickly come back to the gross physical realm and continue with the mission of the work that they were doing in lives prior. On the other hand, those who had done tremendous harm and destruction when they were here in the gross physical realm, upon death, as they go through the hall of self-judgment, great limitation could be placed upon them. And one of the things that can happen to them upon their time on the subtle realms and even moving into the incarnation, the gross physical realm, is their consciousness can be split up into, or split up into several parts. And each split can then take upon incarnation in order to go through certain lessons before that soul is able to bring those parts of its consciousness back together and into a whole and return to a state that it was prior to being split up, but this time going through several lives of experience and lessons, and hopefully never commit the types of crimes and atrocities that done previously, gain experience and knowledge and learning to better themselves and evolve further. Let me see, where else did I want to cover? All right. So that's life after that. Did you want to add anything, Nehemiah? Or Bernard, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm good. It's just a lot when it comes to life and death and reincarnation.
Yeah, it is.
You had a question, I had to walk away for a minute.
No, I was asking if there's anything else you wanted to add, or
I think the most important thing is to understand is what happens to us once we, I guess, enter quote unquote the light on the path, and how much I guess control, conscious or unconscious, that you have over this process once you begin, once you're initiated or you start on a path of metaphysics, and you become aware and conscious of your own actions. I think that's one of the most important things that we get from this diagram. And it really makes a difference once you are, quote unquote, in all caps, aware of your actions and the impact you have on your environment. Everything changes.
Yeah, that is true. I think that's why I think that's one of the reasons why the Catholic Church took reincarnation out of their teachings, and a lot of the Christian churches as well, because you could see traces of reincarnation in the Old Testament and New Testament. Because once people realize that they have a choice, then they make better choices with their life and with the energy that they put into life.
Yeah, what I really like about this about this approach and looking at it this way is that the role of karma, I guess the role of karma is no longer seen as punishment. And if you want to use the world of finance that we live in, karma is both it's both a debt that's paid, and sometimes it's a deposit that you have at your disposal over time, and it's just what side that would you choose on be on. Is it a debt, or do you want to make a deposit? It's not always a punishment.
Right, right.
So I want to finish up our discussion on life after death by focusing on the realms, the levels of consciousness we should aspire towards, particularly levels of adeptship and higher. In Dr. George King's lecture of life, was it life after death? The spirit realms, sorry, he called it the spirit realms. He talks about the basic realms, and he talks about the realms of the masters. And the realms of mastership being the realms that we aspire towards and are working towards. So we'll start with the solar plexus. So what this means is, as we raise our consciousness from the lower basic realms up Sushumna, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, and the Christ, we at the solar plexus center, we enter the realm of a young adept. When manifesting Kundalini at the solar plexus chakra, the adept takes control over the mind and the body functions. It begins to experience tremendous control over psychic senses and emotions. He also experiences some elevation of the physical body. Higher conscious astral and etheric projection is possible. I think it's possible there. All right, so as we raise Kundalini to remember Kundalini being the vehicle of consciousness. As we raise our vehicle of consciousness, as we awaken it, unravel it from the base, move it through the sex center, and then up to the solar plexus center. At that level, we are operating as a young adept. When we manifest Kundalini at the heart chakra, we are operating at this level of an adept, and there it takes control over all the subtle bodies and physical body. The adept is reaching mastership. He also gains the power of elevation of the physical body. Full conscious astral and etheric projection is possible through the lower and higher realms of earth. I have a question here. How often do we go through reincarnation?
Hundreds of thousands of times. It depends on the person.
And so, Ron, remember we talked about samsara, the cycle of rebirth, reincarnation. If you look at the 9 freedoms, bravery, love, service, enlightenment, and ascension, it is at ascension where we break the cycle of rebirth and no longer have to go through reincarnation involuntarily, life after life after life after life. But to accomplish ascension, to reach the level of ascension, could take hundreds of thousands, millions of lives, depending on the karmic pattern of the individual entity. But to break that cycle of rebirth, we must go through ascension, and to achieve ascension, we must raise Kundalini in full, raise consciousness in full. I believe it's at the throat or Christ level. I think it's the Christ level, right? Yeah, because at the throat level, we break the ring pass knot. Oh, I'm sorry, don't break the ring pass knot. We're able to pass through the ring pass knot. But as we'll see here, when we get to the experience level of the master level, we take on the title of an avatar and we break the wheel of reincarnation, wheel of rebirth. Is that correct, Imai? I think that's correct.
Well, when you get to the crown level, when you get to the Christ level, you can probably enter into ascension at any time.
Oh, okay.
But when you get to the crown level, you break the wheel of rebirth.
Because at the crown level, that's when we get to interplanetary. We no longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. At the throat chakra, we have an experienced adept and a young master level. When manifesting Kundalini at the throat chakra, the adept becomes a master, and he begins to see the purity of all things. The law of karma becomes clear to him, and all his actions fall within the framework of the law. He begins to experience the freedom of mastership. That's Kundalini manifesting at the throat center. Now, when Kundalini manifests at the Christ chakra, the master becomes an experienced master, and he begins to clearly understand the cosmic theme of the Earth and solar system. The cosmic secrets and power of the solar system begins to reveal themselves to that master, and he begins to take on the title of avatar. Oh, here, it's mentioned here. Then at the crown chakra, when Kundalini is manifested at the crown chakra, the master becomes an avatar and on the brink of becoming an ascended master, as Imai just described to us. When the avatar becomes an ascended master, he takes on a risen body, which allows his consciousness to exist and operate on a cosmic level. All right. So risen body, meaning a body that no longer needs to go through death and rebirth, as you mentioned there, Ron. An ascended body. He's on the brink of becoming a devatar, or a creative aspect. So these are the realms if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. Those are the realms of the masters and the adepts, and which we should all strive towards. I think next time I'll end this discussion briefly going over how we can move ourselves through these levels. We did talk about moving and manifesting Kundalini on each psychic center, but specifically the steps and methodology that can best allow us to do that, help us to do that. And we'll look at the 9 freedoms: bravery, love, service, enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, ascension, interplanet existence, eternal existence, solar existence. This is a very deep and advanced subject, so I'm just going to go over it in summary and invite you to, you can look back. There's a book authored by Dr. George King called The 9 Freedoms. You can purchase that from the Theory Society. There's a series of lectures given by Dr. George King on the 9 freedoms. It's also available for purchase, the actual transmissions themselves of the 9 freedoms. And for further study on the subject matter, we do have a playlist on YouTube, which Nehemiah goes into the 9 freedoms and it shines more light on the subject to help us to understand it. So these couple of handouts I'm going to go through next time come from that discussion on the 9 freedoms. Specifically, we'll look at bravery and love. I think there's another one that they put together in service, which also ties into the prayer technique and so on. So we may go briefly over that next time, and then we'll finish off our discussion of life after death and moving through or evolving through the realms of the masters all the way up to ascension. And then after that, after next week, we'll go back into our review of the previous lectures. So I'll have the transcript ready for class 2 of the Metaphysics 101 lecture. And we'll go through that. Maybe we'll go through the first 30 minutes of it. I'll go through the transcript of it. And then we'll continue thereafter our review of the previous lectures, and as well as including additional diagrams and illustrations to help us study that material. All right, so do we have any final questions or comments before we close out today's session? Is there anything you wanted to add, Nehemiah, for closing?
No, I emailed you and Bernard some more diagrams. You can look over it.
Okay. All right, and I'll try to figure out why I sporadically lose connection to the chat and fix that for next time. So I apologize if I was late to getting to some of your questions. Guess I have too much running on my computer at one time. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, you can go to aetherius.org. In here, right? USD, and get a copy of the 9 freedoms. Highly, highly recommend picking up this text. And there are also lectures that accompany. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys can't see it. So here, if you go to the Theory Society website and go for audio downloads, you'll find the lectures that he gave, that George King gave on the 9 freedoms. And then here's the book itself. Okay, and I do have it available as an ebook too. Cool. And the movie I was referring to earlier called Astral City, or in Portuguese, No Solar, Astral City, A Spiritual Journey. It's a good movie describing what happens once one transitions from the physical realm into an astral realm. And so I recommend taking a look at that. All right. So there's no final questions or comments. Then let us close out today's session reciting the New Lord's Prayer. Second, let me cue it up here. The New Lord's Prayer. O divine and wondrous Spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, send forth now through me thy great and lasting power. Allow me, Almighty God, the lasting privilege of radiating to all the world thy great love, so that those who suffer may be given the power and energy to rise above their weaknesses. Almighty God, in great humility do I ask you to send forth your power to give to me this great lasting privilege of being a channel, so that my suffering brothers may be helped and guided and healed and lifted into thy light, so that they who know not may look up, and in doing so receive to their higher selves your divine counsel. Almighty God, this day have you granted me a divine privilege. I ask you now to give to me the strength, so that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you. Oh, great peace, great peace, great peace. In praise of your greatness, O God, doth my soul sing. Grant it energy to sing on forever and forever. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attendance and participation. So remember, next week, we will finish up our discussion on life after death with a review of the 9 freedoms. And then the following week, we will pick up with Metaphysics 101, class number 2. So if you look on our playlist on YouTube and scroll down, you'll see Metaphysics 101 series, which was given maybe a decade and change ago. We'll look at the second class. We'll do a survey, maybe take us a couple sessions to go through the first 30 minutes or so. We'll read through a transcript, and we'll have additional notes and diagrams to help us with our review of those earlier lectures, and we'll pick up on a few others. I'll announce which ones we're going to go over as we go along. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Dwayne.